Good evening. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Stu, don't sit down. I was going to have you. Oh, wait, she's going to call the roll first. Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, Laura Lee, if you would please call the roll.
Here. Here.
Pam Howard.
Here.
Lori Visdeward.
Here.
Don Kirk.
Sorry.
Barbara Cruz.
Here.
Jarrett Roberts.
Here.
All right, thank you. And now, Stu, if you would lead us in the pledge, please.
Of course. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Pam, if you would read the mission statement, please.
The Thompson School District will be a school district that empowers, challenges, and inspires students, faculty, staff, parents, school leaders, and community members to learn, achieve, and excel.
Thank you. First item tonight is item 2.1, which is the adoption of the agenda for June 16th. I will entertain a motion and a second to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Barb and a
Second.
second from Jarrett to approve the agenda as presented. Are there any changes or corrections at all? No? Okay. Sorry, I was just reading it over. Seeing none, Laura Lee, if you would call the roll, please.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Visdeward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you, and the agenda is unanimously adopted. Next is approval of the minutes from the June 2nd meeting, and again, I need a motion and a second to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion from Pam
Second.
and a second from Stu to approve the minutes from June 2nd. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? No? Laura Lee, if you would call the roll, please.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Visdeward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you, and the minutes are unanimously approved. Next up is the public participation portion of tonight's meeting. We will start with item 4.1, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Schaefer.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Board of Education. Welcome to summer. It's a little warm, but summer also brings summer school. And this year we have nearly 1,000 students in our Camp Extreme at 4 different locations. So this is it's a robust program. It's a 3-week program offering students experiences in STREAM, the acronym Science, Technology, Reading, Engineering, Art, and Mathematics. So it's fully integrated, project-based. The 4 schools that the programs are held at are Carey Martin Elementary, High Plains, Lucille Irwin, and Winona. And this serves our kindergarten through 8th graders. We are offering credit recovery programs for high schoolers, and that's housed at Ferguson High School. Students who attend Berthoud High School are participating virtually, and for our other high schools, it's being held in person at the Ferguson campus. Really good stuff. I plan on visiting the 4 sites next week. I'll do some visits in classrooms. The initial feedback, this is day 3, has been very favorable. I was actually at a meeting yesterday, a Thompson Education Foundation meeting, and one of the members of the committee has her children are attending summer school, and they were just raving about it. So that's one satisfied family, but again, it's good to know that program's going well, so we appreciate that program. I want to give you an update. Believe it or not, even though school's out, we have sports continuing due to our unique school year. Seasons were adjusted, so we have a number of our high schools engaged in kind of regional playoffs, and we're actually doing quite well. So let me just kind of do a quick rundown. Berthoud baseball actually qualified for the regional round of the playoffs. They did play earlier this week. They had an amazing season, and unfortunately they did not advance, but I just want to call out that they did make the regional round of the playoffs, and that's great. Thompson Valley girls lacrosse will make the playoffs and most likely will host. They had a great season. We should find out either today or tomorrow where they're placed, but again, we congratulate the girls lacrosse team from Thompson Valley for making the playoffs. This past weekend was state tennis in Pueblo. Berthoud, Thompson Valley High School, and Loveland all had young ladies who qualified. The district was highlighted by Loveland High School number 1 singles, Balin Geis, and she finished as the state runner-up. So that's a big deal, and so we congratulate our girls tennis players down at the state tennis meet in Pueblo. And finally, Loveland girls golf team has qualified for state. Monday and Tuesday of next week, they'll be playing at City Park down in Denver. So we will root them on, and we've got a couple of really strong golfers at Loveland High School, so we'll see how they perform. That's really exciting. Finally, summer not only means summer school, but it also means bond projects. Now that the kiddos are out of school, we can now enter the buildings and do additional renovation and work. And this includes, and so let me just first say 18 total schools are currently closed and work is in full swing. And this includes floor abatement and deferred maintenance projects, including HVAC and BEST projects, parking lot repairs, new painting and flooring, secured vestibules. And those who are really interested in knowing what specifically is being done at each school, we have that posted on our TSD website, so we invite you to take a look at that. And then finally, the High Plains school design work is moving along. A committee selected the location where the addition will be located. Both the gym and classroom addition will be added to the south side of the building. So that is awesome, and we will be updating you when we come back in August with High Plains. And finally, Riverview. Furniture is showing up. So the building is built and up. They're putting the finishing touches, and it's always a good sign when furniture moves in. So kids are not far behind. So we are on time, on budget, and that's all good news. So we will be opening that up in August, and that concludes my report.
Dr. Schaefer, I also think the Thompson Valley High School girls soccer team made it to the state. They're seated number 5 in the state. So I think they're in the playoffs or not?
They could be. I got my list from, but if yeah, so
Well, yes, they are.
If they are seated 5th in the
They are
state,
seated 5th in the
so
state, which
Thompson
is
Valley
the
High
highest
School,
they've ever been.
huge.
That's
So we
really
are
big.
equally proud of them,
Yeah.
and thank you, Pam, for
Yeah,
pointing
sure.
that out. Yep.
Eagle, eagle, eagle. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. All right, thank you, Dr. Schaefer. That moves us to board and committee reports, item 4.2. I think I'll start down this side, Dawn, with you.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2 weeks worth because that's all I got done. I've been having a crazy day. I attended a CDE, Special Education Advisory Committee training yesterday, and then our own SEAC had our planning session for next year, which was really great, but it was several hours. It went till 10 o'clock last night. I think we got really busy getting excited about things. I also was asked to do some storytellers training from the Working Families Party about the impacts of the pandemic and the recovery specifically, what else needs to be done, so advocating for that. And then we had our last meeting for the Equity Task Force last Thursday. And I know I'm missing things, but that's where I'm at.
Thanks. Jarrett? You have a report? No.
No,
Not yet, not at this time, okay. All right. That's fine, it's summer. I'll just go ahead real quick and give mine. I attended one of the budget forums. The district did 2 budget forums with Gordon Jones. I attended one of them, and then today I spent an hour up at Irwin Middle School with the Kids Pack folks handing out the weekend weekend food bags, I guess, and they were very busy. There's summer school going on in that building, I guess, and once the kids got out at lunchtime, there was a steady stream of parents and kids. A couple kids came through on their bicycles and scooters to grab lunch, and so the school district gave out the nutrition services, the lunches and breakfasts, and then Kids Pack does the weekend food bag at the same time. So it was great to see the coordination between the 2 groups, and it's nice to see the parents taking advantage of the services. Pam?
Okay. The Thompson Education Foundation, our big summer project is Help Kids Succeed, and that is the backpack program that provides backpacks for, I think we're looking at 1,700 backpacks this year for kids in need in the district. So there's 3 things that folks can do in the community. You can go to thompsontef.org and just look up Help Kids Succeed. You can donate so we can purchase the school supplies to put into the backpack. You can volunteer. They use Sign Up Genius, and there's a lot of different slots. This is going to be July. There's a lot of different dates because there's loading and unloading, and then there's actually the backpack stuffing. So July 21st, 22nd, 27th. It's all on the thompsontef.org website. And then if your student or someone you know in the community needs a backpack, we're also trying to get the word out that they can request a backpack at the school that student is registered to attend this August. So please spread the word if you know of a family or a student that will need that backpack full of school supplies to have a successful year. That's our big summer project. Thanks.
Thanks, Pam. Stu?
All right. So as the pandemic pushed us to different instructional modes in this school year, the Berthoud Schools Fund purchased $35,000 in instructional resources, technology, and professional development for the Berthoud schools this year. That's my report.
Oh, okay, thank you. Barb?
Okay, I also attended the budget forum with Lori, and Family Pie met again. We did our last one for the summer, I believe, right, Lamb? We're done. I've been to, DAG, the design committee for High Plains meets every 3rd week, so we met twice, end of May, I guess it was. And then we meet again this Thursday, and then I think we're done for a while on that one. It's been kind of interesting because we had to do them online for the first few times. Our last time was person to person, and tomorrow night we'll be there. So it was kind of fun to see the people in real life at the meetings. And then I packed kids pack bags the last 2 Sundays. And first Sunday we did 960 bags, and this last Sunday we did 1,000 bags. And so we have a lot of kids that are needing support, just like with the backpacks. So we just have to step up as a community. That's all.
Thanks, Barb. And Paul?
Report.
Nothing? Okay. All right. That takes care of the board and committee reports. And next is item 4.3, public comments. We have a few tonight. There's none calling, correct? Okay. Pam will read the little preface statement for public comment, and then Paul Banks will run the clock on the time.
Because the board wants to hear the viewpoint of the public, we have scheduled time during the regular board meetings for comments from citizens. The board has set aside an unlimited time for public participation prior to the business portion of each meeting on the first and third Wednesday of the month. The time for each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and each individual will only be recognized once. The board will not respond to comments or questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Pam. Go ahead, Paul.
So first up, we have Pilar Clauston. Hope I'm coming close. Okay, thank you. You can step up.
Just, come on up to the podium. Microphone will work on its own, and Paul will run the timer for 3 minutes, and he'll give you a high sign if you hit the 3 minutes.
All right, thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. On June 2nd, 2021, Dr. Maria Gabriel presented the Educational Equity Update to the TSD Board. Her presentation included the recommended action steps of the Western Educational Equity Assistance Center of Metropolitan State University. In the WEAC's Equity Compass Review Draft Report of April 2021, they state in Section 1A of Ratings of Equity Indicators that there is systemic and structural bias in the district and that there are only pockets of support to address these issues. The report states further that there are district employees that do not believe bias is present, and parents that deny or doubt it, and parents who are concerned with the direction the district is moving on these issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, as they may or may not even exist. I have been asked to present here tonight by residents in the district, and we agree with the concerns expressed by other parents on these issues. We have reviewed the website describing the WEACS group, including their podcast, Anti-Racism for White Educators. This training assumes all whites are privileged and have a leg up in life, and that whites should feel guilty for being white, and that any attempt to defend oneself and whiteness is a result of defensiveness and white fragility. Besides being a self-insulating argument that allows for no reasonable dissent, this is an insult, is divisive, is hateful, and a falsehood. In addition to the immoral, racist, and hateful allegations against the white people as described, we find the following 2 recommendations by WEAC reprehensible. 1, professional development of administration and instructional staff on systemic and structural bias, and 2, student curriculum targeted on that subject. We feel the implementation of these factors will actually lead to the systemic and structural bias that is falsely attributed to the district by WEAC and emotionally abused children based on race. Transparency. It's my time.
No, you're good.
Okay. We seek transparency on the part of the district. Regardless, we will be reviewing in detail the discussion topics, decisions, and actions of this board relative to this divisive and manufactured issue. We will not hesitate to get involved and oppose any decision by this board to train administration and instructional staff related to systemic and structural bias, as well as implement student curriculum focused on this topic. Thank you for your attention.
Next, we have Tom Kerrigan.
Is this her phone? Good evening, Superintendent Schaefer and Madam President and members of the board. My name is Tom Kerrigan, and my wife and I live here in Loveland, and we are on the leadership team for Kids Pack. Thank you for the opportunity for a public update on Kids Pack. Briefly, the full demands of COVID-19 2020 created a huge demand for food bags. Kids Pack was active 48 of the 52 weeks of 2020. Total meals sent home in 2020, just over 164,000 in 27,509 bags at a cost of $184,000. That is 250% of a normal year's expenses. Each Kids Pack bag has 6 meals in it, with a goal of 55 to 65 grams of protein in it. From January 2021 to the end of the school year, over 76,000 meals went home in over 12,700 bags. Since last summer, partnering with the Loveland Library, over 2,000 bags have gone home from the library. And just 3 weeks ago, we added bags to the Berthoud Library, and the story was run in the Berthoud Surveyor, so I think that word is getting out. And the great thing is libraries are open 6 days a week. So our motto has been very simply, get a book, get a bag. So we're thrilled that that's working with the partnership. Kids Pack is now its own 501c3. We now have a registered dietitian looking at our food bags again this year, looking for new healthy items. And Kids Pack is focused this summer really on 3 projects, one of which we saw operate when we were in Amarillo, Texas, a year and a half ago, which was involving the kids, especially in grades K to 5, like, what do you like in your bags? And we were at Will Rogers Elementary School, and we had some 40 items out, and they brought in 55 kids, and they wrote up their top 10 items. So being a Rotarian, we're not afraid to borrow good ideas. So our first example will be at Orchard Place in July. We're looking for one summer school and another level-ed housing opportunity to get kids to tell us, we think we know, but I'm always going to be surprised. So we're working on that project. And something we wanted to do last year but couldn't because of COVID was assign a volunteer to each and every school to make sure of continuity of information from Kids Pack to that school, because we see numbers up and down all the time. So we're trying to, it's an idea that Lori Shear brought, and so we'll be looking to start that in September. And then in a couple of weeks after our open house, we'll be sitting down as a board and going through our SWOT analysis again to see where we're strong and where we need to do some homework. And finally, I'm happy to say we have moved into the Forge, our new home across the street. We're deep in the middle of Building D in the computer room. And we have lots of room, and it works well. And we have fans now, Barbara. We got fans.
Oh, good.
So things,
It was a little warm.
yeah, for us older people, the fans are important. Anyway, our open house will be Saturday, July 10th. You'll all be receiving written invitations next week. And I realize this is not a forum for questions, so the superintendent or Mike Hausman will tell you how to get a hold of me, and I'll answer any questions. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Tom, and welcome to the neighborhood. We're neighbors now. All right. That's the end? Okay. That concludes public comment portion of the meeting. We now go to the action consent agenda. There are a lot of items on the action consent agenda. I will go ahead and read through them. We will take them up as a whole unless there's anything that anyone wants to pull off there. I'll go ahead and read them and then ask for if anybody wants to pull anything off, and then ask for a second, or a motion in a second. Item 5.1, approval of personnel extra duty coaching recommendations. 5.2, approval of expenditures over $50,000. 5.3, approval of Head Start grant application. 5.4, approval of second reading of policy GDD, classified and non-licensed administrative, professional, technical staff vacations and holidays. 5.5, approval of bond-related contract and associated project budget for Centennial Elementary School. 5.6, approval of bond-related contract and associated project budget for Laureen Edmondson Elementary School. 5.7, approval of bond-related contract and associated project budget for Truscott Elementary School. 5.8, approval of bond-related contract and associated project budget for Cottonwood Plains Elementary School. 5.9, approval of bond-related contract and associated project budget for Lucille Irwin Middle School. 5.10, approval of bond-related contract and associated project budget for Community Connections. And 5.11, approval of bond-related project purchase of equipment over $50,000 and associated overall budget for equipment at Riverview PK8. Is there anything anyone would like to pull off the consent agenda?
Just a question, Lori. There is not a 5.12?
That item was pulled down into discussion action item number 8.3, is that correct? Is that the one you're asking about? Stu, do you have an old
Yes, the old agenda.
an old agenda? Yeah, so 5.12 would have been approval of site and facility assessment?
Yes.
Okay, so that item was pulled already ahead of the meeting, and it's now a discussion item. So it's now item 8.3 under discussion action.
So it's not part of 8.3, or it's in place of 8.3?
No, it's down under, it's out of the consent agenda altogether,
Yeah.
and it's on the back side of your fresh copy. Do you have your fresh copy of the agenda? So it's item 8.3, approval of site and facility. Got it? Okay.
I see it.
I know, all those numbers and points. I get it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need a motion and a second on the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion from Dawn.
Second.
And a second from Pam on the consent agenda. Any further questions? Hearing none, Laura Lee, if you would call the roll, please.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you, and that passes unanimously. You will notice, as Dr. Schaefer mentioned, there are a number of bond-related projects on there. There's a lot of work going to be done this summer. Exciting. Okay, this brings us to second public participation opportunity in our meeting. Tonight, we have on the agenda the adoption of the proposed budget for the year. So item 6 is public participation, and it's a public hearing for the budget. This is a requirement under state statute, and I will go ahead and read that. It says, any person paying school taxes in the school district is entitled to attend the meeting of the Board of Education at which the proposed budget for the district will be considered. Any taxpayer or his representative is entitled to file or register objections to the proposed budget prior to its final adoption, and that is, the reference there is Colorado Revised Statute, Section 22-44-110, Section 1. So at this time, I can entertain any public comment on the budget, only on the budget. Is there anybody here who wants to speak on the budget at all? Going once? Going twice? Okay, thank you. So we can just go ahead and pass over that. Which brings us now to item 7, which is the proposed budget adoption. So there's a couple of parts to this. Item 7.1 is the approval of the resolution of budget adoption. If I could read that, yeah, okay. Gordon, do you have that? Yes?
Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, I'm Gordon Jones, Chief Financial Officer for the district. All three of the documents that you have in this section of the agenda are statutorily required for the board to fully adopt the budget. The first is the resolution of budget adoption, which is just that, adopting the budget as it's been proposed. The resolution of appropriation designates the expenditures that the board is giving the district permission to spend out of each of the funds over the coming year. And the third item is the resolution of use of beginning fund balances, meaning that if there's any use of the beginning fund balance that's going to take place during the year, we have to call those out at this time. So that's what the three resolutions are. If I may just provide a brief comment on the budget, it's very similar to what you saw before. I think there's about a $35,000 difference there. That was a footing error that was discovered as we were reviewing. So it's actually improved the results of the budget. There was a number or two numbers that were double counted. So it actually adds a little bit more to the reserve balance, about $550,000 budgeted to be added to the reserve balance. Also, as a reminder to the board and the community, this is the first part really, or the main part of the adoption of the budget, but there are other opportunities through the year as new information becomes available. There's an amended budget opportunity in the December-January timeframe, and then supplemental budgets anytime after that. Typically, we reserve those until June of the following year for the board to consider if there are any. It's been referenced in the board reports that there were 2 community forums that were offered to the community. They were advertised on the district website. There were several people that attended those, I will say, community members as well as staff members, as well as 2 of our board members. So that's an opportunity that is offered every year for the community to come and staff to come and find out any more that they care to about the budget. The other comment I'll make is this is the culmination of a long process. I know you are tired as tired of me being up here and having to listen to the budget as perhaps I am in presenting it. I think this is the 5th or 6th update that the board has had from the budget perspective. So I appreciate your patience and your attention to the preparation and the proposed budget being presented, and then would ask for, staff's recommendation is to ask the board for their approval of the budget and these resolutions this evening.
Thanks, Gordon. I'm going to go ahead and read the resolution of budget adoption, and then call for a motion and a second on that. And then if we have any questions for Gordon, we can do that. I'm not going to read the other two resolutions unless anyone wants me to. Okay, they're here, they're public, they're provided, but I will read the resolution of budget adoption. So it's a resolution of budget adoption 2021 to 22 budget. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Thompson School District, R2J, in Larimer County, Colorado, adopt for the fiscal year July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022, the proposed budget entitled Proposed Budget for 2021-22, including designated reserves as indicated in the proposed budget for multi-year fiscal agreements, emergencies, and all other requirements necessary to comply with Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado State Constitution. The board also adopts the appropriation, which will continue capital leases on 800 South Taft building lease, the High Plains school lease, and the bus lease. Resolution regarding the measure, important features of the budget. This budget ensures that the Thompson School District R2J holds unrestricted Tabor emergency cash reserves in the general fund of $5,228,848. The Board of Education of the Thompson School District R2J in Larimer County, Colorado, is adopting a budget prepared using GAAP on a modified accrual basis of accounting. In preparing this budget, Thompson School District R2J has accrued for previous financial commitments, including but not limited to salary accruals and agreements for the purchase of materials and services. The Board of Education has reviewed the projected fund balances indicated in the proposed 2021-22 budget and authorized the use of the beginning fund balances as required. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Thompson School District R2J in Larimer County, Colorado, adopt the 2021-22 proposed budget and its key features as described in the information provided. Dated June 16th, 2021, Thompson School District, R2J, and it will be signed by me as president and Barb Cruz as secretary. So I will entertain a motion and a second to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Pam and a second from Jarrett to approve the resolution of budget adoption for the 2021-2022 budget. Is there any further discussion on the budget adoption? Hearing none, Laura Lee, if you would call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you. And the budget adoption is unanimously approved. So there's two other parts to this. Item 7.2, approval of the resolution of appropriation for 2021-2022. Gordon, do you have anything other to say about that?
No, this is the same document
Part
with
of it.
those minor adjustments that was presented 2 weeks ago as
Okay.
proposed.
All right, I will entertain a motion in a second to approve the resolution of appropriation for the 2021-2022 budget.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion from Stu and a second from Barb to approve the resolution of appropriation for the 2021-2022 budget. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, Laura Lee, if you would please call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you, and that is unanimously approved as well. And the final part of the budget proposal, or the budget approval process, is item 7.3, approval of the resolution of use of beginning fund balances. And again, I will entertain a motion and a second on that.
So moved.
I have a motion from Dawn
I'll second.
and a second from Barb Cruz to approve the resolution of the use of beginning fund balances. Any questions or discussion on that? Laura Lee, if you would call the roll, please.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you, and those are unanimously approved. Thanks, Gordon. Barb, I'm going to pass these down for you to sign.
I was just going to thank Gordon and his group that helped him accomplish all of this. So thank you very much, Gordon.
All right. Next is item 8, which is discussion action items. First item on that portion of the meeting is 8.1, which is the approval of the State of Colorado Interest-Free Cash Flow Loan Program Resolution. Is that you too, Gordon?
Sorry, Madam President, I didn't realize I was next on the agenda as well. This item is brought to the board for discussion and hopefully action this evening. This is the program that has been developed as a significant part of the revenue for the district is associated with property tax collections that take place primarily over the second half of the year and especially in February, March, May and June. We have significant collections and receipts of those property taxes from a local level. So a large portion of our revenue, over 50%, is collected in the second half of the year, whereas expenditures are much more consistent over the course of the year, not exactly 1/12 each month, but very systematic and more in that line. So this creates, can create, it doesn't always create, but it can create a short-term cash flow issue until those revenues are collected in the second half of the year. So this is a program that the state of Colorado has adopted. It's been in place for quite some time. And they allow participation in this program. It's interest-free loans that a district can take until they get those tax proceeds, and then the tax proceeds are used to pay back that whatever draws or loan that takes place. The district has participated in this program since the 2017-18 fiscal year. And in the memo, I believe you can see the documentation or the amount of borrowing. It's ranged from a little over $10 million to $7 million over those 4 years, or 4 or 5 years, whatever the participation has been. There's a preliminary cash flow or budgeted cash flow that's attached at the end of this. The presence of the federal stimulus dollars has created a new element to this that typically isn't seen. Those are reimbursement grants, meaning that the district incurs the costs. We get permission from CDE to spend those dollars first in the broad buckets. Then the district has to spend those dollars up front and then request reimbursement from the state. So again, it creates a bit of a cash flow issue. So the resolution that is for your consideration tonight shows an approved borrowing of $15 million. That's the same dollar amount that we had in place for the 2021 year, but we didn't borrow near that amount. We borrowed about $8 million and then paid all of that back in March. It has to be paid back by June, but every year that the district has participated, we've paid that back in March each year. So it is the same requested borrowing as last year, with the anticipation being, again, giving the variances that may be in place because of the federal stimulus dollars, borrowing that is less than that level.
Questions for Gordon? And since this is basically a program that we were, you mentioned that it's interest-free?
It is an interest-free program, yes.
And since this is a program that we've basically been participating in for the last couple of years, we have it on discussion action tonight to take action on it. So I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the State of Colorado Interest-Free Cash Flow Loan Program Resolution.
I so move.
I have a motion from Jarrett and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none, Laura Lee, if you would call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you. And that is unanimously approved. And would you pass that down to Barb too? Barb, that one needs your signature as well. And Gordon, could I ask you just to come here for a second? There's, I'm trying to sign these and there's, they're not numbered sequentially. Is that part of that same, is that part of the loan? That, I have the resolution.
Yes, there's 2 pages.
2 pages to
on
that?
one.
Okay, okay. All right. Thank you. Paperwork. It's a big paperwork night.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have been known to walk off without or to take the papers home without signing them, so.
Well, last year we had to do it all digitally.
Don't want to do that, right? That's right. Okay, thank you. All right, next up is item 8.2, which is approval of the Conrad Ball Middle School, Mary Blair Elementary, and Monroe Elementary Consolidation Program, and I believe we have Todd Piccone to talk to us on that.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Education, Dr. Schaefer, Todd Piccone, Chief Operations Officer. Thank Gordon for letting me have time tonight. But tonight in front of us is that the board approve the proposed consolidation of Mary Blair and Monroe Elementary with Conball Middle School and the associated contracts and budgets. So as presented to the board on June 2nd, 2021, and in accordance with Board Policy FCA and FCA-R, staff recommends the proposed consolidation of Mary Blair Elementary School, Monroe Elementary School, and Conball Middle School. The proposed disposition of the buildings will be approved by the board at a later date. Staff presented options to convert Conball to a K-8. The below budget includes the Building Excellent Schools Grant, the Lease Purchase Grant Award, the associated bond budget, and you'll see the land sale proceeds, which now is proposed to make Conball the option of a PK-8. So you'll see in the table below, the best grant is for $5.2 million. The bond proceeds is $13 million, and the land sale proceeds is the $2.7 million for a total project budget of $20,962,000. You'll see in the rest of the recommendation is the proposed contracts and contractors for the project. If so approved tonight, the project design will start, what time is it? Pretty quick. They will be starting this summer, not for community input, but just to gain building knowledge and background. And then the community input and involvement will start in August when everyone returns. So for this discussion item, is there any questions?
Questions, board? Stu?
Todd, regarding the land sale proceeds, are those proceeds from a particular sale, or is this an accumulated amount of money?
This recommendation is for part of the proceeds of the Summerfield site that we reviewed to label surplus in the last board meeting. Yes.
Thank you.
Look at for the rest of the portion of the proceeds for other projects, which we don't have at this time.
So to clarify, you're committing, or we're committing, that 2.75 of that, if we should realize more than 2.75 from the sale of that, that goes to other projects?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. Any other questions? All right, I am going to entertain a motion and a second to approve the consolidation of Conrad Ball, Mary Blair, and Monroe schools.
So moved.
Got a motion from Don?
Second.
And a second from Jarrett to approve the consolidation of Conrad Ball Middle School, Mary Blair Elementary, and Monroe Elementary. Any further discussion? Great, hearing none. Laura Lee, if you would call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Stu Boyd.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Vista Ward.
Aye.
Don Kirk.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, and that passes unanimously. Todd, you can go out and do whatever it is you need to start doing in 5 minutes. Except I'm guessing you're on tap for item 8.3, which is approval of site and facility assessment.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
I am, thank you. Yeah, so tonight we are seeking approval to proceed with a site and facility assessment. This study includes a review of all TSD buildings, both site and buildings, and it will be composed of a team of architects, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, in partnership with TSD staff, both facilities and then building leadership, community members, students. A portion of the study too also includes an equity portion, which will facilitate a process to define a list of equity and suitability standards with the district to then use to assess our schools against. So our goal there is, right now, we don't have really a standard for any of our buildings that says, when we look at different facilities, the different facilities within the building, whether it be gender neutral, ADA, we don't have really a set standard how to grade the buildings against, or the sites, so either or. So we're gonna use this to then create a standard, to then say, okay, here's to make it equitable between schools and for staff and students. Here's our standards, and then on top of that, it'll develop a list of what the schools need. So it's really a way to, one, capture the needs in more depth of facilities, so just the true mechanics of the buildings, the site safety, so then what in the site, we have some sites that we've looked at before, what can we do to make the sites more safe? And then the third one is creating that equity assessment to make sure that as we're looking at the buildings, all those pieces are created equitable, but then looking at not only, the ADA or gender neutral restrooms, but then the educational equity too. So between building and building, what pieces and components of the building how should we grade the buildings against each other to make sure we're creating a equal system. The proposed is, well, what I will say too is this also aligns with our long-range master plan that the board approved, I think now 2 years ago. So this is just the next step within that long-range master plan that's also in board policy. And we're looking at funding this out of the PILO account, which is an adequate use of those funds for this proposal. So are there any questions on this?
Questions, board? Stu, go ahead. And then Barb. Stu and then Barb.
All right. Not a question, Todd, but I think the inclusion of this equity part of the assessment is really important. The district is obviously very committed to equity in a whole lot of different ways, and the fact that this will now become part of a facilities assessment, I think is a great idea. So good job on that.
I just wondered the timeline, I don't think I heard you say it. Is it a summer, or is it a fall, is it ongoing?
So it is not a tonight.
You're not going out now?
It's about a year process.
Okay, that's what I wondered, if it
So we are
was
doing some of
ongoing.
this summer when obviously the students aren't there, but it's also it's a lengthy process. It'll take about a year. Our goal is by the end of this next school year to then have it wrapped up to report back.
Questions down here? Oh, Paul.
Just wondering, could you break down where the $140,000 is going? What exactly are we spending that money on, and who's it going to?
So it'll go to several different consultants between kind of what's listed above there, the architects, mechanical engineers. So within, it's really a project to spend that $140,000. In the end, I'll say it's a site walk of every school, the site and interior, all the rooms, and then it's meeting with all the staff too at each one of those buildings. So that's why it's, it does take quite a process because we need the community input, the staff input, and then also talk to some students about how we assess that. So in the end, I guess when you ask where the dollars will be going, it'll be going to those consultants to review the different systems. And
where are we getting these consultants?
they were looked at, well, through the board policy FEG, they're professional service consultants that we have hired or look at hiring to do this work because it's what they do nationwide and for districts across the nation. So they're consultants that are well versed in the background and of this work. So.
Well, and Wold is the architect on this, right? So Wold is.
So they're going to do the facilitation. Yeah, and they were through an RFQ process to get to that point.
Questions down here? Could you give me one example of what something that they could discover in sort of an academic, I don't want to say academic, but an educational inequity? For instance, I don't know, a middle school doesn't have a science lab or something.
Yeah, so there's program standards, which is pretty specific between each school. When you look at science or art, that's pretty specific between each school. But then it's looking at, for example, say flex space or maker space, or when you look at Riverview, there's an kind of innovation area. Okay. So what are those pieces? They're here, and how do we integrate that to more of a standard across the district?
Great, thank you. That helps. All right, we have to vote on this one too. Okay, so no other questions? All right, we're doing a lot of voting tonight. That's because we're going to take July off.
Can I do that?
No, not you. Not you.
Gotta do all this stuff we're voting on.
Todd, take this weekend off.
All right, I will entertain a motion and a second to approve the site and facility assessment study.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Don and a second from Jarrett to approve the site and facility assessment study. Is there any further discussion? Laura Lee, would you call the roll, please?
All Banks,
Aye.
Stu Boyd,
Aye.
Pam Howard,
Aye.
Lori Visita Ward,
Aye.
Don Kirk,
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you. And that passes unanimously as well. And I think, is this you too, Todd, the water? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Item 8.4 is approval of sale of share number 7008 of the Consolidated Home Supply Ditch and Reservoir Company.
Yes, so tonight for discussion and approval is the sale of the water share 7008. On May 5th, staff came to the board and asked them to claim it as surplus with a minimum sale price of $400,000. Since that meeting, we have received an offer for $425,000. Tonight, we're asking for approval to proceed with the offer that we have in hand for the $425,000. And these funds will be put back into the PILO account in which it was taken from.
Questions, board? Is this one share?
Yes,
Okay.
just one share.
All right, if there's no questions, I will entertain a motion in a second to approve the sale of that water share.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion from Pam and a second from Stu to approve the sale of share number 7008 of the Consolidated Home Supply Ditch and Reservoir Company. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Laura Lee, if you would call the roll, please.
All Banks,
Aye.
Stu Boyd,
Aye.
Pam Howard,
Aye.
Lori Visita Ward,
Aye.
Don Kirk,
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Jarrett Roberts.
Aye.
Thank you, and that is unanimously approved. Thanks, Todd. We move now on to discussion items. Item 9.1 is Regional Tourism Act, RTA update, and we have some guests here from the City of Loveland. Steve Adams, Loveland City Manager, and Alan, I'm not going to try your name. Kirchmerrick. Okay, I, as you can see, have a name that's just like that. Alan Kirchmerrick, who is the Chief Financial Officer for the City of Loveland, and Moses Garcia, the City Attorney. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Madam President and board members. Thanks for the opportunity to come here tonight at your last meeting before the summer starts. So I know you want to get going, so I will make this short. We are here tonight to talk to you about an exciting project called the Whitewater Adventure Park and Resort. We have been working diligently to try and get this project moved along. We're at a step now where we'd like to come and visit with you about this project a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit about why that's important for you, and also to hear your questions if you have any this evening. We also are going to ask if you could please hold your questions. I have 6 slides. I promise we'll go quick, and I will be followed by Alan, then Moses after me, and then we'll pick up questions from there. But that's the reason why. That's why we're here tonight, and we look forward to this presentation. We're excited to be here. Thank you, and Alan will now join me.
Thank you, members of the board. I'll be quick, too. I like the place you've got here. It's very inspirational, and I really like the pace of your meetings. This is really a delight. It is wonderful. I'm going to talk just a minute about the...
I'll be available. No, I'm totally joking. Totally joking.
The Regional Tourism Act was a result of the Great Recession that we all went through. You remember that, 2007, 8, 9. It was not a good time for anywhere in the country. It was not a good time for Colorado. The state legislature saw an opportunity and looked around at what other states were doing to spur economic growth, and they said, why don't we have something that will attract new projects to bring people from all over the country into Colorado. So they came up with this Regional Tourism Act, the creation of regional tourism authorities and regional tourism zones. And the city of Loveland watched as other places were successful. There were 5 designated across Colorado. The first one was in Aurora. It was the Gaylord Hotel. I don't know if any of you have been down there. Soon thereafter, about 2 years later, the city of Pueblo had the professional bull riders grant, and they're pursuing that, and they also did some convention center work and some more work in the downtown. City of Colorado Springs did the City for Champions, 4 projects in Colorado Springs, and all the while, once we're watching this, we're thinking, what could we do in northern Colorado? And we thought we would not only have a single city, but we would have a multi-city approach. And in the last go-around, the City and County of Denver had the National Western Stock Show approved, and up here in northern Colorado, we can go to the next slide, I can talk about what we did here. We reached out to all of the communities around us, Fort Collins, Windsor, Estes Park, and said, let's do something really regional. Even we talked to Weld County. At one point, we had as many as 11 projects that were being considered. It got narrowed down to 9 and then to 7. And then we did economic analysis on all of those. And as it turned out, there were 4 projects that moved forward, 1 in Windsor, 1 in Estes Park, and 2 here in Loveland. Since over time, Windsor decided to drop theirs out. The Stanley Film Center is on the verge of being financed right now. They are going to have a film center up there, a new theater. Really nice, big project. It's going to be part of the campus at the Stanley Hotel, and it's on the verge of getting financed. In Loveland, we had 2 projects. One was an indoor water park resort, and when you think of that, think of the Great Wolf Lodge. We were working with the people that actually started the Great Wolf Lodge. They'd sold out their interest, and I think they had a non-compete period, but they wanted to come back to the market, and they wanted to try their new concept here in northern Colorado. And then we also had a visit from a gentleman that lives down the road in Lyons, an Olympic kayaker. His name is Scott Shipley, and he's been designing these type of kayak parks across the world, usually at Olympic venues. He built one in Rio de Janeiro, he built one in London, he built one in China, and now he'd like to build one in his backyard. So he doesn't have to go all around the world, he can just drive 30 miles. Anyway, Scott Shipley is kind of the glue that's held this together, because the original proponents have dropped out, and now we've got a new partnership, a public-private partnership that has stepped in. Scott met these people at the planning for the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, and they said, well, we'll take a look, we'll make a run at this and see if we can get this done. We had 5 years to get it done. We didn't get it done in 5 years. We got a 1-year extension. November 12th is the last day, so we've got to have substantial performance to get something done. So we're working on the financing right now. E3 partners combined the 2 projects, a hotel and a kayak park, together. It was going to be on over 70 acres. Now it's on about 40 acres. They changed their location from way up northeast in Loveland, and now they want to be right along Highway 34 and I-25. So let's go to the next slide. Here's what it looks like. If you can imagine this along Highway 34, close to our Loveland Sports Park out on the east side of town. But basically, they're going to put in about 800 or 900 parking spaces to go along with a hotel that will have about 330 rooms. It has to have at least 330 rooms. It will have an indoor water park similar to what you might see at a Great Wolf Lodge. They want to take it to a higher level. They want to attract not just kids up to 12 or 13 or 14, but young adults and older teenagers. So they want to have more specific things that are of interest. The kayak park is the part on the lower level. Basically, you get in a raft or a kayak and you get to shoot down rapids. They can dial them up. Enough water rush through there to give you a class 4 rapids. And the idea for Mr. Shipley is that we'll bring Olympic training events a couple times a year, and then also individuals will be able to come to this park and practice it all the time. Between the hotel, which is on the right side, is the lazy river, so that'll be a little tamer version for families. Anybody can do it, especially on a hot day like today. It would be beautiful to have this facility. But all of these features in there, they're also going to put in lots of other attractions like zip lines, like climbing walls. There's some talk about a surf club or a surf feature. an obstacle course, a canopy tour, and they've even invited our Loveland Fire Rescue Authority to come out there and do training. So imagine you tipped over a truck, they'll throw the truck in the river and they can go down there and try to rescue it, and then they can pull all that stuff back out of there and go back to the regular recreation stuff. So there's a lot of opportunities on this. But this would be contained in about 40 acres just east of where the park is. So with that, I think I've got Moses Garcia to finish up.
Slide, please. Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer, my name is Moses Garcia. I'm the city attorney for Loveland. Part of the reason, we want to inform you about the water park, and the wonderful project that's coming your way. But part of this, the reason we're here is also a legal reason. The city's project is located within an urban renewal area. In order to meet the requirements that in the deal that we have made with the state, we need to be able to remove that property from the URA. Anytime you remove property from a URA, you have to go to all the taxing entities and let them know it's happening. So in about 2 weeks, you're going to receive a notice that tells you that certain property is being removed from the URA, and we want you to understand why. And so this is the background and why we're here today. If you look at the slide before you, you see all the yellow. That yellow represents the US 34/Crossroads Corridor Urban Renewal Area Plan. A long phrase, usually we just call it the Centerra Plan, the Centerra URA Plan. That's what everyone knows. Centerra is a big player here. So somewhere within this 40, in this area of yellow, there are 40 acres that are designated to be part of this new project. When the state came to when we went to the state and made the deal with them, the state said, we want to know that the city is also making a commitment to make sure that this project is successful. The state promised its sales tax increment. They said, city, you also need to make some promises. We want you to promise your sales tax for certain portions of the property, and we want you to promise your property tax. Well, the structure of a URA is all the property tax in a URA is diverted to the infrastructure. So when we're making this deal with the state and they're saying we want your property tax, we now have two commitments. We have property in a URA, and all of our property tax is going toward the URA infrastructure. Well, now we say, can we have that property back? Because in order to have this deal with the state, we need all of our property tax back. So we are excising that area from the URA so that we are able to get the city's property tax back and commit to the deal that we are making with the state. The effect for the city really should be non-existent because that property is undeveloped. So there is no tax increment revenue being generated from that property because it's just open fields at this point. So we believe it's a good deal. And so if you're looking for a downside, I'm not here to tell you there's one. It's just to make sure that you're informed and you feel like you understand why this is happening. That we can go to the next slide. Questions. I am happy to answer questions, and of course I have my colleagues with me to help out.
You have a question, Jared?
Yeah, I had a couple. So looking at the map, it's the open field south of Centerra, next to the sports park, correct?
So although Alan's been fairly specific, what I would say is the city is subject to an NDA not to disclose too specifically the property location.
Yeah, no problem. Quick question, when would this development take effect, or when is the planned opening, if there is, at this point?
I might ask for Alan. What I can tell you is that under the RTA statute, this has to be developed very quickly. So I think within the next 3 years or 2 years, it has to be developed. So that's why we're on this sort of fast track at this point to meet the obligations of the state.
Other questions? Stu?
I'm going to direct this question to Gordon. Is there a financial impact of this measure, for lack of a better term, to the school district?
We're exploring that possibility right now. I don't believe that to be the case right now, but we're working with the city and with legal counsel to determine if there is any financial impact that it would be favorable to the district.
About unfavorable to the district? I mean, is there, at this point, that land is empty, correct?
Not knowing which land it
Rough.
is to me.
Okay, we're assuming it's undeveloped.
You're not
Yeah.
going to take down.
They're not going to take down houses to build a water park, so it's undeveloped at this point.
As Mr. Garcia said, it's in the TIF area now, so those tax dollars are, the official legal term is diverted, so they're removed from the assessed valuation of the district overall. Those are the questions that we're exploring right now, but at this point, my initial reaction is there's no downside to this, but again, we're exploring that with the city and with legal counsel.
Thanks, Gordon. Does that answer your questions, too?
It does, thanks.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the city has the right and ability to do this, that this is sort of a gentlemanly, you're letting us know because the statute says you need to let us know now, yeah.
My response is, I think you do have a bigger say than that.
Oh, okay.
You have the right to object, and that actually is part of the reason why we send the notice. If you're not happy with how it's happening or the result or impact to this school district, you could voice an objection.
All right. Any other questions?
I do have another question. Knowing that this was approved by Larimer County, do you happen to know whether any proposals are coming from the northern part of the county, from Fort Collins? Wouldn't be related to this, but do you know whether there will be any kind of a facility that would be sought after by Fort Collins, for example?
So like in competition?
Yeah, competitive.
Really, I'm just curious because this only addresses the southern part of the county, and I was just curious as to whether there's anything going on of a similar nature in the northern part of the county. No, okay.
Wanted to make sure that when we did our open draw, trying to get the regional people, we went to Fort Collins and said, you've got some great facilities that could benefit from this, but we couldn't convince them to join the group. So we can't add any new projects now. We can only go with the ones that were approved back in 2015. So, and that was the last round for any regional tourism authorities in Colorado under the current legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, there you go.
There
Look
it
at
is.
that.
Will we have to vote on this, or is it simply informative?
It's, at this point, it's informative. My understanding is if we were to object, then we could.
Okay.
Yeah, then we would bring it to a vote.
So we're going to receive a notice in July when we're gone. So is there a timeline on that objection? If there was any, when would we have to respond?
You would have to respond within the 30 days from the time you receive the notice. It'd be coming at the very end of June is my anticipated timeline, or the very beginning of July.
So could we ask, Gordon, can you give us an update when you have the information that you're compiling? Okay. That would be, I think, really helpful to know your eyes are on it. Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
Quick question, is there anticipated participation or partnership with the school district with this project? Or is that too soon to say?
At this point, it is too soon to say. This is simply the development, even the pre-development piece.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. That's pretty exciting, and it looks, I really like that they combine the two watery projects because it makes a lot of sense to have the indoor, the outdoor, the hotel, all of it in one big place. So, thank you. All right. Next up is item 9.2, professional development update. Back to my agenda here.
Good evening, Madam President and board members and Dr. Schaefer. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Melissa Schneider. I'm the Director of Professional Development. And I'm here to talk to you about some exciting work that's going to be done next year for licensed professional development. Thank you, Laura Lee. So some of the goals for the presentation tonight are to share the connection of the professional development with Strive 2025. Also to share the three identified PD priorities for licensed staff for next year. To share licensed PD plans for the 5 days that we were able to get in our calendar for next year. And to share how PD is vetted and tracked for accountability. So first off, just the connection with Strive 2025 and our PD plan. It connects to all 4 places in Strive 2025. We're very proud of that. You will see later tonight how that works out, but I won't read everything on the slides to you, but for student achievement, you will see a really pointed focus on literacy. Inclusive and supportive culture, we've got that threaded throughout with equity and also with our student engagement work. Next slide. And then I love this part because the human talent piece and the stewardship of resources are plan. We worked really hard on the negotiations team. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I've served on that, but we arrived at a calendar that really was a win-win in every way. We have 5 days that are allocated towards professional development. We are not paying staff extra duty wages to be able to take professional development. It is truly embedded in the work that we're going to do in our contract year. And it's going to build our capacity and our human talent and our performance. So it's super exciting. So these are the 3 identified priorities for PD. I'll be referring to it as PD. So we have literacy at the elementary level, student engagement at the secondary level, and equity at all levels. And I do want to point out that this connects, as you'll see in the next slide, to our Thompson educational expectations. We really want to have those 3rd grade reading scores be proficient. That's something that statewide everybody wants. And we also want for our student engagement to impact our chronic absenteeism and our graduation rates in a positive way. And equity, we've heard a lot about that in previous presentations, but we want to have that impact in all of our practices across the district. So taking a look at TEE, you've got your conditions for learning, your learning delivery, evaluations of learning, and learning design, which are also threaded through these particular pieces of PD as they apply to licensed staff and learning services. So here's kind of the nitty-gritty of the 5 days that we'll be doing. 2 of the days are right back to back, right when people come back to school. These are before the students return to school, and they are in our TENS week, so August 10th and 11th. I would like to add that any or all of you are welcome to come and drop in. I welcome you to come drop in on any of these PD that we're doing district-wide. But you'll see that there's a pattern of the elementary having a focus on literacy and the science of reading. I'll get more into that in a second. And secondary having a consistent focus on student engagement. And then you'll see it moving towards some real strategy work with Kagan, day 1 and day 2 later on down the line. And then some pathways content time. And what that means is taking the learning and applying it and building that into the practice and the lesson design. January 4, it looks a little bit different. We anticipate an equity event for the whole district, either the morning or the afternoon of that particular day, with the balance of that time being spent on the science of reading and then more student. So you've heard a lot about the science of reading and how we arrived at being able to push for this work. It came down from the state as a mandate that to receive READ Act money, our teachers need to have a new training based on the science of reading teaching practices rather than perhaps some of the phonics and phonemic awareness and the 5 components that have been happening throughout the past 10 or 15 years. The state determined that that was not getting the results for our students on READ plans, and so therefore have realized through research that this is the best way to teach readers. It incorporates latest research on dyslexia as well. The particular plan that we chose is 48 hours. It's very intense. It includes a state-approved test at the end of all of the modules so that our teachers, it will show to CDE that they have met this requirement. But what we like about how we chose this is that the consultant, Striving Readers, has agreed to cater to our needs of Thompson School District, incorporate our data, as well as the curriculum that we're using with ReadyGen and Foundations. And we also have purchased the Foundations curriculum for all schools, K2, and for those who already had it, a third grade set as well. So heavy focus on literacy. And I'd like to add too that we are exceeding what the state wants us to do. The state says K3, we're doing EC5. And so I believe that will really bolster what our practices are for teaching literacy. So the 612 plan for student engagement incorporates Kagan strategies for collaborative learning, also called cooperative learning in Kagan, and Get Better Faster. I'm going to talk a little bit about Get Better Faster first. And that's really designed and has already started just last week on June 8th with a group of teacher leaders and administrators, and that is really for them to be able to notice those indicators of the strategies being used for student engagement. And that's really cool because on a walkthrough or on a educator effectiveness rating, our raters are being trained right now to recognize what student engagement strategies look like. And so in tandem with that is the Kagan strategies for collaborative learning. And that goes way back. I actually, 15 years ago, was trained in Kagan strategies for cooperative learning, and I remember a lot of them and was just looking at them the other day. And the coolest thing about this is, while they may go way back, in looking at a recent piece of 2016 research on Hattie's effect sizes, those particular strategies in teaching and learning are connected to the strategies that Kagan will be teaching our to use. And now we'll be teaching our administrators to notice what they are very specifically with Get Better Faster. So that's 612 plan for student engagement. And then lastly, for the equity professional development, you've heard a lot about our equity professional development with the passing of the equity policy last summer, and many of you have played a huge part in that. We have selected Corwin Deep Equity as an outside consultant to come in and guide the work with different employee groups as well as licensed staff. And the way that this will be going on with licensed staff at the building level is to be able to get some grassroots groups started in being able to get some equity training in a teacher leader group in a building, and then having those guys bring that back to the particular building that they're in. And what's really cool about that is equity is meant to serve the needs of each and every. And you can fill in the blank of what that is at the end. Each and every school, each and every department, each and every student, each and every family. And in this case, we are able to recognize that every single school in our district is going to have a different approach to equity because of the needs of the students. And so by being able to have groups that get the training school-based and bring it back to their particular colleagues, it's going to make meaning for them. So that's super exciting too. And then lastly, you might be wondering, how did we pick these consultants, or how did we decide on these people for next year? So I want to give you just a tiny bit of background about that. But all of our consultants went through a rigorous screening process or questioning process that aligns with our own course approval process, Learning Forward Standards, and Strive 2025. That's because every single course that we teach in Thompson School District, those data are being collected so that we can align professional development, the practices that it will impact, with the student outcomes, ultimately, that will have impact. And so in selecting our consultants, we wanted to make sure not only were they going to provide us with the work that we wanted them to do for the right price, but were they going to serve our Strive 2025 needs? And were they going to perform at the level that Learning Forward Standards of Professional Learning say should be included in all professional learning at the school level? Those include learning communities, resources, data, the things that actually make professional development long-lasting. And so we really screened our consultants. We selected them, on purpose. And we're really looking forward to seeing how this work is going to play out. This is going to be a fantastic year with 5 times the amount of job-embedded PD than we've ever had. So thank you so much, and what questions do you have?
Board, Stu, and then Paul.
I'll ask a question. I have 3 or 4, Paul, then you can go ahead and ask a question, and we'll tag team here.
Those are my questions.
Who's going to assess the effectiveness of the PD? Will that be done by the presenters? Will that be done by the district?
Well, you're looking at her. I've got
I feel good about that.
a data collection that has been going on, and actually I'm very excited about, because we're working on connecting all of those dots that I mentioned. So educator effectiveness with student outcomes, and our PD is tied to educator effectiveness rubric items and standards and elements on the rubric. And practice indicators. So before a course even goes into our professional development software system, those items have to be populated for us to know what information we're collecting. And so the goal is that the software that we have and pay for is collecting these data for me in a way that I can export them and find correlations to see what's really working. Where do we have gaps in our professional development offerings? Where are our teachers underperforming in terms of what's being marked on the educator effectiveness rubric? And is there appropriate professional development to fill in those places? So together, not just me, but together with our new director of assessment, I would anticipate the student outcome side of things would be something I will be collaborating with her on, to be able to tie together, how do we know this is working, and how do we know that we can attribute the results to this? I hope that helps.
This is a piece that has been missing, so I'm really excited and interested to hear what you just said. Yeah.
Was that your question?
Not all of them?
You had 4.
No, I'm going to let you ask the question, and then I'll ask my next one.
Well, I may reveal what little bit I know, but I just wonder if you could elaborate on the Kagan training we're going to be doing, because my understanding is like literally hundreds of engagement strategies or structures, whatever they call it. I mean, way more than we could ever tackle at one time. How are we focusing that, or really what are we?
I do have some notes on that help to narrow it down. Yeah, let me grab those. Kagan strategies there's a huge list of them. I completely understand. Tracy Stegel is in the room too. She had a little bit more information on this too.
And so did we go through and like actually specifically choose some things that we?
Well, where is Tracy? For the Get Better Faster, it will be aligned to what the administrators are being taught to notice in the classrooms. So.
Correct. Good evening, Dr. Banks, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer. With the Kagan strategies, the purpose of choosing that particular group of strategies is that it's easily implementable by teachers and automatically and immediately seen in the classroom in terms of student engagement. What we know is that the people who are doing the talking are doing the learning in classrooms, and the combination of the collaborative learning, collective strategy, with students talking to one another, and purposeful grouping of students utilizing all of the learning in Kagan, that's the reason that we chose that. As we then combine that with Get Better Faster, as our building administrators and our teacher leaders collaborate in walking through classrooms, what we should be seeing is each student engaged at the appropriate level of engagement, speaking with one another. Does that answer your question?
I'm just trying to make sure I'm remembering. So if I remember the Kagan, I mean, they're like I said, there's literally hundreds of different things they could do.
There are, yes, and so.
Cover all of them, or do we narrow it down to?
Thank you. So in the Kagan strategies, we're going with the collaborative learning strand, and it's actually over the course of 5 days. So 2 days will be in the 21-22 school year, and then we will conclude those in the 22-23 school year. Perfect. I'm sitting down. I'll sit closer.
More down here?
I have one more, but if somebody down there has a question, go ahead, and then I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Stu.
Okay. I have a question about the pathways/content time. Are we talking about something related to career pathways, or Melissa, talk to us a little bit about the pathways approach.
That
Okay.
content time, I can tell you, is more about like departments coming together, like all social studies teachers, all math teachers, all science teachers, implementing the Kagan strategies in their particular instructional area and deciding on common assessments and that sort of thing. But pathways.
And so then, over the course of all of our secondary teachers, while we have folks teaching in content areas, we also have people who are engaging in specific strategies. For example, our speech pathologists or our school psychologists who would not be talking in the same way about student engagement, certainly concerned about student engagement, but part of our work over the course of the last at least 2 years of being here is that there has been very little time for job-alike folks to come together. Content being one, but then other SEL specialists, for example, school counselors is another example. The other benefit of these 5 days is also offering the opportunity for our classified staff to engage in professional learning. And so that's another piece of pathways, but that will actually be over the course of some different days as well.
So will there also be some cross-curricular or cross-disciplinary aspects to this? I know you had, Melissa, I believe you had talked about the fact that all the science teachers would be together and all the social studies teachers would be together for at least part of this, so there will also be some cross-instructional time?
Yeah, so during those 2 content days that you saw on the calendar, those will be with job-alike folks. And part of the work that we're doing with our building leaders is in having the conversations at the secondary level about if this is looking in one way in science and in another way in math, these should not be in silos, these should also be connected. So we don't want professional learning in staff meetings, for example, to be completely different and separate from what's happening in these days. We actually want it to be connected.
It's terrific.
I'm going to take us to the elementary science of reading question. So I had a couple. One is, how are they going to be grouped together? And are they all going to be doing the same? Are they going to work through it in order? It's very time intensive.
It is.
I've worked with it and I've done it. And so I know, and just wondering what the plan will be.
So the consultant that we have is not going to be using the CDE modules in the case those are the ones that you've done. I know they're pretty intense and a little dry, but the consultant that we have is going to take the content that is in those modules that is needed for mastery and delivering those in a more humanizing way, if you will. More live Google Meets, in-person meetings. There'll be cohorts. This particular consulting group can do groups of 100, and so Shannon and her team will be looking at the actual details of that. But this particular consultant that we chose was extraordinarily flexible and engaging, which we wanted for our teachers with this.
And then will they address ReadyGen with it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
they've already started to work on that.
Okay.
It's really.
Okay.
Dr. Schaefer and, go ahead, Dawn.
I was just going to mention that you're glowing and your smile is like massive. So, all the details of this have been backed up by the way your face is talking about it. So
I'm
thank
pretty
you for
excited
that.
about it.
I know, it's awesome. Thank you.
Melissa, just for the benefit of the Board of Education or community, so while the training for secondary science of reading is pretty prescriptive, we have asked our trainers to also incorporate elements of SEL and equity kind of organically. Can you speak to that?
Yes. So equity, and I realized when I spoke about it, and just as Tracy was talking to answer your question, Mr. Boyd, around how will there be cross-curricular pieces, and equity is going to be that glue where you actually are talking with people who share students across curricular areas who need to know the story and the need of the students. And so we have asked, and that's been one of the screening questions in our consultant choices, is how will you infuse equity and diversity and inclusion into this PD? We would have never chosen that.
And I just have one quick one. On the elementary the science of reading. That's going to be literally every K-5 teacher is going to go through that program. What about like the specials teachers?
Like the art and music and PE teachers, they won't. They will have something else, and I don't know if Tracy wants to speak with that, but that's a great question because they won't be engaged in that.
We're including them in the secondary Kagan training. And so Kagan is actually K-12 in terms of cooperative learning, and it has a very robust connection to our specials classrooms for elementary. So over the course of that pathway content time also, all elementary art teachers will have an opportunity to collaborate. All elementary PE health teachers will have an opportunity to collaborate, et cetera.
Okay. And did you cover accountability? Like how we track?
Well, when Mr. Boyd asked me the question around how are we kind of collecting those data to see what PD impacts practice, impacts student outcomes, we're in the middle of, we're set up to track that as we go through this process. So hoping that a year from now, there's going to be some interesting information.
Good. It's exciting. Oh, Pam.
So this is really a huge improvement, I think, for our district. It's going to affect our students so positively. Looks like, for next school year, it's really dialed in, and I know we don't have a crystal ball, but going forward, can you project what future needs would be? How far will this actually get our educators, and what's going to be needed in the future to continue this work?
Sure. So a few thoughts on that. I'm going to start with science of reading. This is has a hefty price tag. It's a major commitment of 48 hours. And we're not unique in this. Many districts are meeting this requirement. And at some point in time, it's going to become, I would think it would become an expectation on the job description, is that our teachers come here with that in hand, having expected that they got that in accordance with the state requirements elsewhere. Because as you can see, to provide a brand new teacher with 48 hours of unique, individualized professional development, that's going to become pretty impossible. So there will be pieces of that sustain themselves in our new teacher orientation. But for the science of reading, that's kind of my vision behind that, is that this is a lift across the state. And so our teachers across the state, many of them are going to be getting this or taking it through CDE. As far as equity and engagement go, those are things that can be sustained throughout another year, because we will have engagement that needs to be spread down to the EC5 level, because as you heard, only art and music and PE teachers will be involved in those at that point in time. And there will also be literacy things that we're picking up for 612 this coming year. So we are tossing around all kinds of possibilities with how it can look in the future, but almost a flip-flop of making sure our whole system has the important elements of what both halves of K-12 did, or EC-12 did, is going to be important. And equity, will continue. I believe that Dr. Gabriel has shared some of her long-range plans for that, so that's not going away.
Anybody else? Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. All right, board, we've got about another half an hour, 35, 45 minutes left on the agenda. Do you want to take a break, or do you want to power through?
Doesn't matter to me. Break?
Break? I'm seeing break. Okay. We're going to take how about 5 minute, give or take 6 minutes, I think. We'll be back about 20 till.
she was saying?
Yeah, the WEAC report says that we're going to do training on bias.
She's just saying that.
All right. You're going to call us back to order, please. And next up is update on the school resource officer MOU process. Todd Piccone.
Yes, good evening again, Board and Dr. Schaefer. Tonight we'll look at the process for development, where we're at with the IGA and MOU. Some highlights within the IGA, or I'm sorry, within the MOU are there's some different topics that we've taken the MOU and divided into. So there's 5 sections: hiring effective SROs, role of effective SROs, training, upholding statutory and civil rights, and performance evaluation and program assessments, and then we'll look at some next steps. So this all really connects to 2.2, ensuring that our facilities are welcoming, safe, and meets the needs of staff, students, and community. So when we look at the process of development, there were some resources we used. So we used the secure rubrics, which was developed by the Department of Education and the Department of Justice. So that is actually a rubrics that defines different relationships between SROs and school districts. We also looked at MOUs through, there's a couple within the country that we've used as examples, and then also some local SOPs. So we really have taken, when you look at the resources from all over the country, and at the national level between the DOJ and Department of Education. The second bullet point there is really why we're here tonight is to make sure that we've heard the board. We've spent a lot of time talking about this, reviewing what it could be. So what we'll talk about tonight is hopefully what we've gathered from those different conversations. And then we've also done outside work sessions with our legal counsel because the conversation has to go to black and white, and they're helping us produce that MOU. I will say before I get started in the sections of the MOU, the IGA, there are some modifications to it, but really it's establishing the MOU first, and then the IGA will then be adapted to match the MOU to make sure the 2 languages connect or don't connect where they shouldn't connect. So really the main scope of the work is in developing the MOU. The first section of the MOU is hiring effective SROs. So really what this does is it defines requirements within an SRO. So some of the examples are, what's the minimum years of service? So how many years of service do they have to have before they can actually apply to be an SRO? Do they understand the needs of the local community and understand the needs of the social and emotional needs of the students and staff that they serve? So that'll be outlined and defined within that. The other 2 bullet points are more clearly defining the interview process, who was on it. So we'll define, obviously it's LPD or Larimer County Sheriff because it's their employee and their staff, but then also our staff, security department, school administration, parent, maybe a student to be on that interview committee. And then also we'll define, there's always input within an interview process. So how does the law enforcement agency actually take that input and put that into the decision process? So it takes the process or defines the process from really interview all the way to selecting or then not selecting a specific SRO. So that's section 1, hiring of effective SROs. Section 2 is probably one of the, I'll say, more robust sections. There's quite a bit of conversation we had about defining the different scope between law enforcement and discipline, clearly defining the different scopes and what they're each responsible for. But what you'll see is some examples of that are, 1, uniform. So we're putting some language in there about uniform, just to make it the uniforms more uniform between the different schools, and then to coincide with the schools themselves. But really, when you look at the 3 bullet points, those are, there's a lot of information and detail within those bullet points. So we further define how the use of discretion is used. So discretion to either write a ticket, engage, the discretion between administration and SRO. Define the role in discipline issues. So what's the role when it's truly a discipline issue that's handled at the school level compared to when does it go to an SRO? And the third bullet point is kind of a combination of the top two. It further defines second chance process, so school discipline versus truly engaging law enforcement. So that section has to do with more of the self-harm. So the self-harm would be more not suicidal self-harm, but substance abuse when you're talking about vaping, marijuana, alcohol. Defining a second chance within that. So all those first offenses, maybe they don't go to law enforcement. So it's defining alternative consequences between that. That's one section that we're working through with the attorneys too, because there's still some legalities between, just the two substances that are out there. But, our hope is, and where we're going is to define more of a second chance for, students that may enter into those activities. The other thing we looked at is defining the notification of school, of the school admin and us when there is a contact between law enforcement and one of our students. So there is state statute that, that basically notes that you have to report it here, but this further defines within a time frame you've got to get that information to the district, so then we know on the discipline side what can happen, or does it not go to the law enforcement side for maybe a judicial system, but just gets handled on the discipline side. The other piece that we're defining within this role of effective SRO is the mental health response. So mental health response currently is, not defined. So this is defining our first option is, counselor or care providers, whether it be Summerstone or the outside entities we have to help respond to the mental response. But then there also is a trigger point to where law enforcement would get involved, where it's statutorily, if a student has to be on a mental hold at the hospital, that transport has to be done by a law enforcement agent or an actual doctor. So it defines more clearly the two entities and their responsibilities for each. And that's really that entire section is looking at define discretion, talking to what does discretion mean. It's kind of saying what color is water. There's this try to, how do you define that and define what the discretion means. All right, so the next section is training of effective SROs. So the training is not really to do with national training. Excuse me. It's not to do with the national training that SROs have to go through to be certified to be an SRO. So there's national school resource officer training. This has to do specific to trainings within TSD. So it's similar to the TSD training to say admin or the different departments within the district. That's the same items that we'll include in the training, and you can see the list of some of those are equity and diversity, awareness of understanding of students with disability, adolescent development, de-escalation techniques, positive behavioral support, strategies and interventions, suicide awareness and prevention. So it's nothing that we don't already do with our employees. It's just now bringing those that group in with our employees. Then also we're defining the frequency. One of the challenges is when you require this much training, and then there's national training, is how do you do this and when do we fit all this in and work? So that's part of the process too, is working through when do we actually fit this training in, how often do we have to do it? So it's further defining the frequency of those trainings. Upholding statutory and civil rights. So in talking to legal, there's a clear definition too of there's some statutory requirements that we have to make sure we maintain and define. So that's really just saying, there's federal, state, local laws that SROs have to abide by, and that's pretty clean and simple there. The next section down there, if there is a civil complaint, what is that complaint process and procedure? So it's actually defining out how a complaint would be reported. So how is a complaint reported? How does and when does the law enforcement actually engage that entity back? What is that time frame? And then when does TSD actually get involved in that complaint process? And then work towards an action if required in the end. So it really details out if there is an issue, what the opportunity or what the options are for a reporting of a complaint. And the last section is performance evaluation and program assessment. So in essence, this is the section that outlines how we look at how we're doing. But it's not just really how we're doing with SROs. It's looking at the data. So, when we did a lot of work with the board, we looked at a lot of data, and we could see data that was disproportional either between schools. So it's now looking at, okay, let's look at that data and define it twice a year, or we'll commit to looking at the data, reviewing it with the SROs, and then more importantly with our admin to make sure that we're leveling and training between both admin and SROs. So all these discipline issues are looked at the same. So there's a process that outlines really what data to review, and then how do we look at that and when. Also, you'll see the last note there is an annual review of the MOU. So we'll look at, then once a year, we'll take just a larger look at how is the MOU actually working. This is one of the first ones that we can find that actually is a legal binding document, looking at other districts throughout the state. There's some of this happening. And actually, we've been asked, okay, now that you're doing this, can we borrow some of this from other districts? So it's been, it's been good to lead the way and make this happen. But then we'll report to the board once a year to say, okay, here's how this worked. Here's some things we saw. Here's what worked, didn't work. We need to adjust, plus or minus each way. So that section really defines the program and how we evaluate that. So the next step is, tonight we're talking about the different contents of the MOU. We're going to now take June and July, refine it with legal counsel. Also, the next step is to review with the agencies. So we have a pretty tight time frame because we do have some meetings coming up in late July to review the final product. So in June and July, actually, I should back up. Starting next week, we're looking at this with the A2 agencies to start, okay, here's the draft. Let's work through this. Obviously, there's legal counsel on their side that needs to accept and note it, so they're going to start that process next week. Then to have a final draft to look with the board or review with the board in the start of August. So, and there are some 2+2 meetings scheduled. I believe I saw them popping up late July to review this. And then we'll do final Board of Education approval in August for the MOU and IGA. This refers a lot to the MOU, but the IGA will also come along with that. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Todd. Questions?
Can you describe soft uniform? I forget which page that was. I'm not sure if I saw that. The role under role of effective SROs will utilize a soft uniform.
I was going to say they won't have armor, like Titans, but no, it's the. It's really the. They have a lot of equipment and vests and accessories, so it's how that and where that's worn. So, say the school shirt over the protective vest, and maybe some of the accessories are not in certain. It's more just when we say soft uniform, it's. Finding more towards school attire uniform than it is, like a SWAT team type uniform. It's really softening the look of the uniform.
It's literally soft.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like a... Anything else?
I just want to say that.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that other districts are looking at this and wondering, can they borrow we could sell it to them and,
We wouldn't need that loan that we were approving
Gordon
earlier.
said, money.
Money?
But it's exciting to be on the to be leading something like this, and kudos to you and your team. I know you've put a lot of work into this, and I think the topic is a little itchy, right? I mean, the community isn't necessarily sure where we're going with this or what's going to happen, and as we keep talking about it, and as this more information comes out, I see that it's only going to improve both the communication and the collaboration that we have with our law enforcement agencies, whether it's the cities or the Larimer County Sheriff Department. So it can be a itchy process, but I think in the end, the result is going to be beneficial to everybody and the students, which is who we're doing this for. So that's my soapbox for tonight. All right, thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Next up, item 9.4, Strive 2025 update. Don?
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer, Don Huckabee, Chief Academic Officer. Tonight, wanted to give you an update on our strategic plan and our potential revisions. I believe it was about a month ago that Dr. Kuhn shared that we were going to be engaging you in a conversation about some potential changes to the desired outcomes and the district action steps. And at the May 20th study session, board members were engaged in a process to look at those potential changes and provide some additional feedback. We're really in the continuous improvement process with this. The board adopted the strategic plan back in August of 2019. So this is we've wrapped up now a second year, and so it's really an opportunity to look at are the desired outcomes, are the action steps, what are needed at this point. We've now gone through a pandemic. We have adopted an educational equity policy, and we have conducted a culture and climate survey. So the time felt right to go back and really look at, are these the right things right now? And so, as we mentioned a month ago, our original intent was to be able to bring you a document here in June. And the feedback that we have takes a little bit more time to do some nuancing with it. So we're going to take the summer months, take that feedback into account, make some revisions as we can and make sense, and then we'll be bringing back to you a revision to the desired outcomes and the district actions in August for you to further review. And at that time, we will also bring to you what are our celebrations and successes, because we have a lot in the existing plan, and we'll be able to bring that to you in August. So it's really tonight's an update on an adjustment to the timeline, but we will definitely have those back to you in August and ready for your look and your seal of approval. Any questions?
So just to extend on what Don shared and well stated, one of the other things we will bring back to you in the fall is a crosswalk with DAC priorities as well. We want to make sure that, there already is alignment between what DAC was recommending and what Strive 2025 promises to deliver. In providing that status update and report, we also will be crosswalking some of that with DAC priorities as well. So just wanted to make the board aware.
I just have a question, and you probably told us this in May, but now it's June. The committee that you got feedback from the committee of students and staff, how many people were on that, and how much did they meet?
So they didn't meet together. We were still in the video phase of the pandemic. So we brought them together to really go over kind of what it is we were asking them to do. We created a video for those who weren't able to attend, and then we had a Google form for them to complete, where they were to, they had the current plan, the proposed changes, and then we asked them in each of the 4 areas, what are your thoughts about the proposed changes to the outcomes for example, student achievement, and what are you, and looking at do they align? So we gave them some other some criteria to look at, and do those now action steps align to the proposed changes in the outcomes. There were about 30 people as part of the process, and they represented students, parents, staff from all 3 classifications in the district, as well as the community at large.
Great, thank you. Anything else? All right.
I'm back. Can it be fun like last time?
Of course.
It was
Strive 25 is fun.
It was super fun. I'm sitting here a month later going, we should do that again.
We'll find opportunities.
I'm excited.
Thanks, Don. And the last discussion item for tonight is 9.5, which is the fall planning update. And Todd Piccone.
All right, so tonight for discussion is the update on the COVID response for fall of this coming up year. Just alignment with Strive 2025 to ensure all facilities are welcoming, safe, and meet the needs of students, staff, and community. Provide just a quick update on our current COVID numbers. When I say ours, the counties. Current guidelines for summer school, what we are working under, and then projected fall guidelines of some things we're hearing for this next school year. As you can see here, it's drastically different than when we last presented, when the numbers were all in the red. There was, the dial was in the red, the 7-day positivity was sometimes 10 plus. So you can see those two numbers are a risk of low, and then the 7-day positivity of 1.2. So it's definitely gone down quite a bit in the last several months because of the vaccine. So you can see the two charts below are the current amount of citizens that are vaccinated at about 63% in Larimer County. And what's exciting to see is when you look at the vaccinations by age group, the 11 to 17, they're creeping up. If we recall last time we presented on this, it was just when it opened up to 12-year-olds and older. And that number was close, well, near zero. So you can see it is slowly still creeping up. And we're still doing vaccination clinics. We're going to start at middle schools throughout the summer and then still do some vaccination clinics as we get closer to the school year.
All the data on this, on the May, look much differently now that we're.
It was taken from the county.
Dial. I think that, you know what?
I mean, so does that apply to everything, or is it?
I think
Because
the
we might hit
dial
the goal
was
already.
updated on May 5th. Is that right? Because I look at that every day. Because
I know it doesn't look much different
yes,
than it does
it's the
today.
dial that's updated on.
Already reached the goal, if that was.
No, they changed the way they present the data.
They
on May
did,
5th.
yes. So you'll see here is the current summer guidelines. So for masks, in essence, it's for students that are in elementary, 10 and under, do not have to wear a mask. The students that are over 12 that are vaccinated do have to wear a mask. It's still, if they are not vaccinated, they do have to wear a mask, and that's both for students and staff. You will see that as of right now, there's still a requirement to wear a mask on buses. There's a federal regulation for the Federal Department of Transportation that can't be swayed by the state. So there are still masks being worn on our buses. And then obviously, as we've communicated this out, anyone that wants to wear a mask is still encouraged to do so. The contact tracing is still a bit different. It's getting more refined. So rather than doing cohort closures or larger classroom closures, we're doing truly just targeted contacts of a confirmed positive case. So it's down to who was confirmed a close contact, so 15 minutes or more within that 6 feet, and that's it. So there's not going to larger cohort closures, or then the number of positive cases doesn't count. So if you have 2, it was, say, closing down a larger cohort, that's still doing targeted tracing for all those positive cases. Regardless of the mask or the target tracing, we're still doing enhanced, we're still asking everyone to enhance their hygiene, because still washing hands and doing those things still helps, not only for this, but flu season and everything else that we end up. And then our disinfecting, we're still doing that and providing masks and hand sanitizer for whoever needs for the summer school. So going into next year, so the projected, this is, I say projected because the state and our county health director is on the state committee to define guidelines that will be out in early July, that will define guidelines then for the return of the return when students come back. So we're seeing that probably the mask guidelines will stay the same, the target tracing. One item that is actually starting to gain traction is in-school testing. So there's new types of tests that are out that are more rapid, more reliable. So we're actually meeting and starting to figure out how we can just send tests to schools. And that is some of the regulation that we're hearing is going to be different for next year. It's not really mass testing sites. It's more localized to the school communities. So with that, though, then you've got to put IT systems in place to track where it's at. So that's some of the obstacles that we're working through now. And then, as I mentioned before, vaccine clinics, we're setting those up at middle schools now. Working with the county to find creative ways to do vaccine clinics. So we're actually working with the county and starting in middle schools. We'll continue through the summer at summer school locations, and then also still continue them throughout the start of the next school year. And then as you can see there, as I mentioned, the final guidance will come out early to mid-July. So as soon as that's out, we'll issue it, and then have our guidance for this pandemic that's hopefully tailing off. So from there, is there any questions?
So not for a gotcha moment, but just more for a clarification. Can you go back to the slide with the dial on it? Explain to us, so right now this, and I know that the data changes daily, so actually the positivity rate is 1.1% today. So, but the dial's at medium because if you have like a few more people in the hospital, so I get that, and it's when it's posted. There is a larger discrepancy, and if you can explain it with the first dose, where on the website right now it shows residents vaccinated at 51.2%. Is that, so can you harmonize that with what you see with 63.2% and 65%? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the 63 is just first dose given, and then the 50 is it should be the fully vaccinated 2 doses given.
So on the website it says 55.7 residents have received at least the first dose. So I'm just not sure where I just want to make sure that we're clear for the community. Where did you obviously got this from?
This is pulled straight from the county website, so I would say.
Did they adjust it then? I don't want to like do a blame game here, but I understand this is literally a cut and paste pretty much from their website. I'm just looking at today's data. It just showed 55.7%. So it's interesting that there's like an 8%. And not to get nitty gritty, but it was a wonder.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, I would have to say we'd get with the county and see why there's that discrepancy. Because when I pulled the data, that was pulled straight from their website. So.
And this is just a good reminder for the board. I mean, we obviously have to rely on county data, and they're great. I'm not dissing the county. I think they've done a great job keeping us informed and working with us. But when we post things on our website or when we present things to the board or to the community, we're not creating this. We're literally pulling it from the website, and we're trying to get as real-time data as we can. So we try to be consistent.
This morning in the paper, they were talking about the fact that vaccinations are higher in Fort Collins than they are in Loveland, and they kind of indicated a caution to kind of watch what's happening here in Loveland, that it could be, variants could be coming because of that.
One more, and so actually Laura Lee just, so on the vaccine page of the Larimer County site, it's actually at what, 63.9 right now?
63.9 for 12.
So,
Weird. Okay.
64.9 for 50.
so they're accurate, and they just have to pull the data for it onto that landing page. So yes, we trust the county.
Any other questions? Paul?
So your last comment was that you're hoping this tails off. And so I guess my understanding of it, and I haven't heard definitively, they're still trying to decide how long these vaccines last. Do they wear off after 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? So sometime during the year, I think we're going to be faced with people are going to need a booster or not a booster. And if your teacher doesn't get, I mean, we're going to be faced with it. I don't think it's over.
No, it's not over.
I don't know when we start those conversations, but sometime during the year.
Yeah, and those discussions are happening now. When does the booster, if there is a booster, yeah, and that's depending on the different shot and the manufacturer. Yeah, they're all investigating that. And the next round too is also, it's being tested and probably will be released for younger students or younger kids in the next couple of months. So.
Started of how that's going to be rolled out and required?
There is not, no. I can say right now, the focus for the county is to make sure they get as many doses out right now as they can, and then kind of 2 would be to see what the drug companies say about the.
Must be really aware, because if you look at your little card you got, there's 2 empty slots underneath, so something's coming for us.
All right, any further questions or comments? No?
What a
Yeah.
difference a year makes.
Yeah. It'll be nice to be
We're sitting even
fairly,
close.
fairly normal in the fall, in August, so that'll be good. All right, that takes us to the end of the printed agenda. There is one attached written report, item 10.1, which is the Families Partnering in Education report, which is the Early Childhood Policy Council report. Future agenda items, a reminder that we will not be having a study session tomorrow night. And that's, we will not be meeting for the month of July, so don't be back here the first Wednesday of July. So we will be, unless there's some reason to call a special meeting, but we're not foreseeing anything coming up. But you never know. So our next regular meeting is August 4th. August 4th is our next regular meeting here. Any other housekeeping?
Just to remind the community and board members as well that starting on August 4th, we'll be opening up the process for board vacancies. And so that information is already posted on our website, and we'll provide additional information, resources, and what is required. We're also hosting an open house for those individuals that may be entertaining running for the Board of Education or just want to learn more about what a Board of Education does, and that is scheduled for August 4th.
I think it's 4th, right?
So it's right before the board meeting. So that August 4th is a busy day. So we'll have a meeting, and that I believe is from 4:30 to 5:30, 4:30 to
sounds right.
5:30 p.m.
All right, anything else? All right, adjourned. Thank you. Have a good July.